you today?
Good. How you doing? It's great to
Good,
meet
good, good. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you today.
you. Of course. No, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
No problem. I'm super excited. Let's jump right in. And big question I had watching this whole thing is where did you get the inspiration for this movie? Because I'm literally watching, I'm like, how did this go through his head to do all of this?
Well, I think it's twofold. Like the first part is, I grew up in the South and there are always these stories of like, crazy child preachers and people running around. So the Southern Gothic stuff is always really interesting to me. And then I
Hmm.
think second, over the pandemic was watching a lot of friends watching their relationships fall apart and from often due to isolation. And so those ideas kind of merged in my head. I was like, yeah, what if a family goes off to reconnect and the guy's a cheater and they're in emotional chaos. But instead of reconnecting, the isolation makes things worse and someone turns up and that person is sort of the embodiment of a Southern Gothic archetype and it wants to test them and mess with them and probe their relationship to reveal the truth. So yeah, that's sort of how it all floated together in my head.
Did you find it difficult to kind of combine the two? Because you said you had basically the first half and the second half, two separate stories trying to merge into one.
Yeah, for me, I think they combine because I think for me having my first thought was having the couple falling apart and the emotional stuff, but then all good movies I think or all good horror movies I think need a good villain. So it's like pretty soon I was like, someone's got to come in and disrupt this, and that's when Jacob's character Isaac emerged on the page. So it was an organic process. I feel it's sort of almost like having a dream where all these different elements like come and lock into each other and it's a way that in a way that feels weird but still kind of makes sense, creepy
Was
sense.
there anything while you were crafting this that looked great on paper, but when you were directing it, you're like, that's not going to work?
I always feel things on paper are so perfect, then reality intrudes upon that perfection. But no, I actually got really lucky. I think finding the house was really a stroke of luck that helped keep it elevated and stylish and creepy. And the cast, I mean, if anything, it's better than it was on the page because I got actors who really understood the material and like Angela is just tremendous emotional powerhouse. So could make it come to life in a way that felt really visceral. So for me, in that sense, it was a great experience. But yeah, certain things always get sacrificed along the way.
Was there anything that got sacrificed that you really wish you could have kept in?
No, I think the only thing that didn't get resolved was in the script the fate of Tub Tub, the family cat, which in the script I had it in there. The cat was seen at the end, blissfully escaping the carnage and sitting on Grandpappy's corpse. But as it turned out in real life, it was hard to get a cat to do any of this stuff. And then the cat was wonderful and sweet, but not the most trainable cat, maybe. And so I had to cut my losses, and so Tub Tub's fate is unresolved. But that was the only thing that didn't make it onto the screen.
Well, it's not unresolved now because now we know, and
That's
I'll,
right.
I'll
Yeah,
make
that's
sure
right.
everyone knows.
The truth is known.
You mentioned just a few minutes ago how difficult it was finding the specific house. What did you go through? Did you look at so many, or did you know the specific area where you wanted to shoot? And so you just kind of scouted with the team to find it.
Well, it was scouting with a team. We had a great locations manager who actually found the house. I know, and I was sort of familiar with the Bayou
Mhm.
in New Orleans, but not Slidell, which is where we shot. So this was part I didn't know and had never been to, and it was hard. There are lots of homes there, but it was hard to find a kind of old, lavish home. And so our location manager found this place and said, "You got to come check this out." So we drove all the way out there, and it's through these tiny roads and swamps. I mean, it was way out in the middle of nowhere, and it was wonderful. As soon as I saw it and set foot inside, I was like, "We must have it." And then we got it, and then a lot of what you see in the movie is actual stuff, how the house is in real life. So it was too expensive for them to move out all of their valuables, so they kept a lot of them. We just had to shoot around them, being careful not to trash them. Um,
Was there any horror history behind the house? Because as you said, the South is filled with a lot of,
Oh, I'm sure that. I mean, who knows? I know it's been owned by one family, I think, for the duration of its existence.
oh my God.
Um, so I have no idea. I mean, it's such a strange, spooky place. It's right on the water. It's dark and moody. And when it floods, which it did several times when we were there, the water comes like right up to the house. And so I got the feeling, I'm sure over the years it's flooded many times and all kinds of things have happened there. But it was very ominous because of the isolation. So even if it was a bright sunny day, like no one is around in real life, which was crazy because then we had to bring in all the trucks and a film crew, and it became a bit of an odyssey to make it work. But the house is wonderful. I think it's a character in its own right, for sure.
Now, how did you end up with your cast? Because as you said, you ended up with an amazing cast. You really just, brought the movie to a whole different level. So how did you end up with them?
Well, Paul Schneider was always my first choice for this character, John. I'm a huge fan of his. I grew up watching him in the David Gordon Green movies, like all the Real Girls, and on other great movies like Bright Star, the Jane Campion film. And he's just such a chameleon. He's such a great actor. He's both really handsome and charming, but he can be really dark and ominous as well. And I've been watching something with him in it, and it was really good. And I was like, oh, he's a perfect embodiment of kind of like the average white dude who's like hiding these dark, troubling secrets, and is up to no good behind the scenes. And so he was very game. I talked to him early on, and he was on board. And then for Angela, I knew of her from Westworld, and she was great. And someone proposed her name, and I said, "Oh, could we get her? That would be incredible if we could." And then I started talking to her, and she's just, she's very adept at accessing some emotions that are difficult to access, and she loved the script and loved the character, and then she was on board. And then with Leah and Jacob, I got super lucky because they're two sort of up and coming actors. Leah, of course, now is in the Eternals, the Marvel movies, and she's phenomenal. She's like just preternaturally talented. It's wild. And Jacob is amazing. I mean, I had loved him in Mud, but he's like a little kid in Mud, so I didn't know what he'd be like now. But really authentic and funny. In real life, he's so sweet and charming. So it's funny to see him play a nefarious dude.
How hard was it to film the scene where they light the car on fire with, I don't want to give too much away, but they light the car on fire. Because I'm literally watching that. I'm like, oh my God, like that had to have either taken one shot, hope it works, or multiple, okay, we'll just take it.
That was the secret. We actually had more than one car. So it was, yeah, indeed. We actually burned the car for real. It was done practically. There's some minor VFX that kind of augment stuff, but it's actually Angela, the actress, running around the car as it burns, and it's like an inferno. I mean, she was a real trooper to do that. And the car is actually outside the house, so we burned the car for real on the Bayou. And then and we used a combination of Lauren, the actor who played Vivian, is in the car for some of it, and then when it obviously got too dangerous, she's out, and a stunt double is in there. But it was actual real people and fire. We had another car we would bring in. We had like a burn car. We had cars at different stages of being burned up that we would transport in and out to try to effectively sell it, But yeah, in terms of the main burn, I think there may be 3 or 4 times we really just set fire to this thing. By the end, the car is like a pile of ashes. I mean, it's just crazy, and it smelled horrible too. It was like toxic fumes billowing. I mean, we did it safely, but you still, like, every now and then we got like a whiff of it and be like, oh God, this is probably unholy for my body. But it was also fun. It was exciting. It was like a fireworks show. We were all kind of excited to see what it would look like.
Do you rehearse something like that, or just like, well, we have the cars, here's what we would like to happen?
We rehearsed that one. Really, we did like a whole previs thing using this software program, so we could see what's safe and what isn't safe, and we work with the stunt coordinator. So yeah, we had rehearsed everything, so, and everyone has their marks, and we know what's going to happen. And we filmed it in chunks, so it'd be like, here's the first part, then we put the fire out and reset everything and bring in another car and sort of do the next section. So by doing it in pieces, it kept it safe. But yeah, that was probably the most technically challenging one, in terms of that was the thing we had to spend a lot of time. We couldn't just wing that one in case it went horribly awry and burned us all up. So yeah, that was a tough one.
Have you always been inspired by horror films, or was this something, because before you've done a little bit of comedy, you've done a little bit of the thriller, and now into the horror. So is this something you've always wanted to do?
I sort of began by writing YA novels, sort of like horror thriller books, when I was living in North Carolina. And then that was how, and then one of them got optioned, and I came out to LA, and that's how it all began. So horror has always been something that I loved. And I mean, I think in my previous movie, Don't Tell a Soul, is definitely a thriller, but there are elements of it's one step away from being a horror movie. And so I think in this one, I sort of took that step. But yeah, it's something I love. I mean, I grew up in an era where I would just go to Blockbuster and Hollywood Video with my friends and rent horror movies every weekend, and sort of gave myself an education in everything from low budget horror to like amazing, classics of the genre.
Did you always know though, because as you said, you dab in horror before, and now this is a little bit more horror, but still you're dabbing in it. You're not actually full on, this is all gore, all slasher,
Oh
all just
yeah.
gonna scare you. Has it
Yeah.
always been the way you wanted to do it?
Yeah, I think the horror movies I like the most are things like the John Carpenter films, like something like The Thing, where it's really, there's a long build and you kind of love the characters, and then there are big moments of gore, or Alien, I guess, too. And then more recent things like Midsummer, however it's pronounced, I thought was amazing. Like, and it's so emotional, and I'm like so emotionally involved. And by the time the gore starts, I'm so wrapped up in the movie. So I like things that, the horror movies I don't like are ones where I don't feel emotionally involved with the characters. Like, I love it when I'm kind of drawn into their world and their feelings, and I can sort of feel myself there alongside them. And so, yeah, those are the kinds of things I like to make. Like, I really enjoyed David Gordon Green's Halloween reboot, because he took time, to deal with the characters and the generational thing. And it was like really had a gravitas to it, that I thought was super cool. Having said that, I'll watch any horror. Like, I love the genre in general. So I will also watch, like Cannibal Holocaust or Maniac Cop or whatever is out
Whatever's
there.
out there.
Yeah.
When you were writing this story, did you always know that you would be directing it, or is this something as you continued on, you're like, no, I really want to take the helm on this one?
Yeah, I always knew I'd be directing this one. For my last film, it was the same. I've been writing scripts and punching up other people's scripts, and I wrote a movie called Flower that got made, like a dark comedy. And then after that, I was like, I think I just need to direct whatever I write. And so what I wrote after that was Don't Tell a Soul, and I said I need to direct it, and I did. And for this one, same thing. So I think I would only write stuff to direct. I mean, who knows for sure? But I mean, I love, like, it's so much fun for me, because then I love writing, but it's so it can get really insular, So it's kind of fun to write, knowing that I'm going to be hopefully on a set somewhere with actors actually bring this thing to life. It's easier too, because I can write it knowing I'm going to make it. So I'm not trying to make myself look amazing to anyone on the page. I can just jot down notes about how to achieve certain things. So it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, you answered actually my next question, because I was going to ask, as you're writing it, do you imagine yourself, oh, this is how I'm going to shoot this scene, or this is the place I'm looking for that we're going to have to shoot here out in the middle of nowhere by a river, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting for this one. When I wrote the first draft of the script, because it was during quarantine, I wrote it to take place in the desert. It was going to be called A House in the Desert. And then what I learned was the desert there isn't as much mythology to tap into as there is on the Bayou. And then also, it turned out that a lot of filming was happening like in New Orleans and the Bayou. And I thought, you know what, maybe I can pivot from my original idea to something that's a little more fertile and interesting. And so it took that turn. But yeah, that's the kind of thing I can do, because I know when I'm writing, I'm going to be making it. So it's easy to shift things around like that.
Well, besides obviously growing up in the South and knowing some of the lore behind the history and the horror, I'd like to say, of the South, did you have to do any additional research looking into kind of what was more specific to the New Orleans, Louisiana area, or are you just here's what I'm going to do?
Oh, I did. I went through a lot. There's a great book I had that was, I wish I could remember the title. It's something like Monsters of the Deep South. It's like mythological monsters of the Deep South. And it has all the different, like there's like a tar pit monster. Like, I wish I could remember them all. But it's like this compendium of like myths and stories. And so I looked through those, in part because I was thinking, wow, if I find something really cool, I can incorporate it. But in the end, I went with the initial idea, which was this almost Children of the Corn style character, Jacob, who's has the air of a child or teenage preacher in some ways. Because I thought that was kind of scariest, creepiest thing of all. Like monsters aren't always scary to me, but people are often super scary to me. So.
Yeah, it worked. Just by the way, it definitely worked. It had me looking over my shoulder. I'm like, please don't let there be a little boy or an old man following me.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, the old man. Yeah, Doug, that actor, is great. He is so much fun to work with.
It just creeps you out. Well, for my final question for you today, what are you hoping fans get out of the movie?
I'm hoping to really engage people on an emotional and psychological level. Hopefully they see something of themselves in this couple, for better or worse, and kind of maybe they identify the parts of themselves that are not so good or are problematic. I mean, I think I always viewed Isaac, Jacob's character in the movie, as the moral compass who tests people and finds out if they're good or not. So maybe hopefully it'll make people think, and make people think about how they act within a relationship. I mean, neither of these characters act super well, and there's a total lack of kindness and empathy and even basic respect. So maybe it's a mirror, that can be held up to some people. And if people are in a great relationship, that's awesome too. They can look at it and think, wow, I'm so glad I'm not in a horrible marriage like that one.
I'm so glad that's not us.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they can be entertained by the misfortune of this couple.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much. It was great to meet you. I really appreciate it too. Thanks for watching the movie. I love it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was absolutely my pleasure. So thank you guys.